Something here doesn't add up. For years, the music industry followed a predictable rhythm. Groups rose together, peaked together, and faded together. Solo success was never the standard, it was the exception. The rules were clear and rarely questioned. A group could dominate charts as one name. But individuality was expected to dilute that power. History said unity had limits. BTS existed inside those rules for a long time. They moved as seven, spoke as seven, and were measured as seven. Awards, tour, and records were always shared. Nothing suggested the pattern would ever change. Then something subtle began to happen. Not loud, not dramatic, and not announced. One member released music, and listeners stayed. Another followed, and the same thing happened. At first, it looked normal. A popular artist finding temporary solo attention. That had happened before in many groups. There was no reason to assume anything bigger. But over time, the numbers kept growing. Not spiking, not collapsing, just growing. Followers didn't disappear after one release. They accumulated quietly. 10 million followers on Spotify is not a moment. It is a habit formed by millions of people. It means listeners returned again and again. It means the music stayed with them. One by one, each member crossed that line. Different years, different genres, different emotions. No shared release window connected the milestones. Yet the destination was the same. 7 members. 7 individual Spotify profiles. All surpassing 10 million followers. No group in history had ever done that. What you're about to hear changes everything. Because this record wasn't planned as a headline. It wasn't marketed as a challenge to history. It simply emerged from listener behavior. Spotify doesn't reward loyalty to a name. It rewards time spent, saves, and repeat plays. Followers represent a conscious decision to stay. And that decision was made millions of times. Individually. Each member offered something different. Different packing, different tone, different emotional weight. Some spoke softly through introspection. Others delivered intensity through performance. There was no single BTS solo sound. No requirement to match expectations. Freedom replaced uniformity. And listeners responded to that honesty. In most cases, this is where division happens. Fans choose one direction and abandon the rest. Attention narrows instead of expanding. But BTS didn't lose listeners. They multiplied them. A fan arrived for one member's voice, stayed for another's perspective, then slowly understood the larger story. 7 paths leading back to one origin. This is where the old logic breaks. Unity didn't restrict individuality. Individuality didn't weaken unity. They reinforced each other. But that wasn't the end. Because timing matters in history. This milestone didn't arrive at peak noise. It arrived during transition. Group activities slowed. Spotlights were shared, not stacked. Expectations shifted toward uncertainty. Yet the audience didn't retreat. They stayed present. They followed quietly. They listened without being asked. That consistency changed the meaning of success. Longevity replaced virality. Endurance replaced hype. This record wasn't explosive. It was stable. That stability is rare. Most careers burn bright and short. Moments define them more than journeys. But 10 million followers don't come from moments. They come from years. Years of trust. Years of growth shown publicly. Years of choosing honesty over perfection. Years of letting listeners witness evolution. Each solo release felt personal. Not designed to dominate charts. Designed to express something real. And reality resonated. That resonance crossed borders easily. Language became secondary to emotion. Context became universal. Connection replaced translation. Spotify captured this quietly. No press conference was needed. No announcement declared history. The data spoke for itself. 7 names aligned. 7 milestones reached. The pattern became undeniable. The conclusion unavoidable. Now everything makes sense. BTS was never built on limitation. They were built on depth. Depth allowed expansion without collapse. From the beginning, individuality was encouraged. Voices were developed, not merged. Roles were flexible, not fixed. That foundation carried forward. So when solo careers emerged, they didn't shock. They felt like continuation. Like chapters branching from the same book. Different stories, shared origin. This is why the record feels earned. Not accidental. Not forced. Not rushed. Future groups will be compared to this moment. Benchmarks will shift quietly. Expectations will evolve. History always does that. But being first matters. It defines the reference point. And this reference belongs to BTS. Because time placed it there. Not noise. Not competition. Not spectacle. Just patience. The truth didn't need noise. It didn't ask for attention. It waited to be recognized. It only needed time. But numbers alone never tell the full story. Because behind every follow button is a human moment. A late-night listen, a lyric that lands too close. A song that stays when everything else moves on. That is what separates attention from connection. Anyone can attract listeners for a moment. Very few can hold them without constant noise. BTS did it through presence, not pressure. Each member allowed space for silence. They didn't rush releases to fill gaps. They trusted timing over urgency. And the audience respected that restraint. In a culture obsessed with speed, this was unusual. Momentum usually demands constant output. But BTS chose intention over excess. That choice reshaped listener behavior. Followers didn't feel marketed to. They felt invited. Invited to understand a process, not a product. Invited to grow alongside the music. This is why the milestone feels heavy. Because it carries emotional weight. It reflects shared time, not fleeting hype. Time is the most honest metric. 10 million people didn't arrive at once. They arrived slowly, independently, deliberately. Each one made a quiet decision to stay. Those decisions accumulated into history. Some listeners came seeking comfort. Others searched for clarity or motivation. Different needs, same destination. Music became a constant, not an escape. That consistency is rare in global music, especially across different cultures and languages. Yet BTS crossed those barriers without dilution. Emotion remained intact. Spotify simply reflected what already existed. A long-term relationship between artist and listener. Not built through spectacle, built through sincerity. And when sincerity scales globally, it leaves evidence. Evidence that cannot be manufactured. Evidence that resists expiration. Evidence that redefines success. This is why comparisons fall short. Because this record isn't about domination. It's about coexistence at the highest level. 7 careers rising without collision. Most systems collapse under that weight. Egos clash, attention fragments. But BTS expanded instead of fractured. That balance became their quiet advantage. And now, looking back, the outcome feels logical. Not surprising, not sudden. Just revealed at the right moment. Time completed the picture.